Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to, I guess, another episode of our rant series. We don't do too many rants here on the channel, but today is kind of like an all-star rant. And before we kind of get into the gist of what we're going to talk about, let me introduce our all-star panel. Mr. Brendon Snyder is here with us today.
Hey, everyone.
Scot Lade from the Prog Corner.
I'm an all-star, man. That feels pretty good, Pete.
And our two longtime Sea of Tranquility folks, Mr. George Lamie from 4 Fusion Friday and in the Prague seat, and Jamie Laszlo from The Curse of the Collector, The Monsters Den, Hudson Valley Squares. You've seen Jamie everywhere here on the channel. So thanks, gentlemen, for joining us today. So I want to give a little history of why we're getting together here today to talk about this particular topic. You've all seen the title of the video, right? So we get a lot of people who come here to Sea of Tranquility or all the other channels that are represented here today, people who have a hard time accepting and going and seeking out new music. And by new music, I mean newer bands, newish bands from the last 20 or 30 years, new music from bands who have been around for 50 or 60 years. There seems to be, and we see it on SOT a lot. I see it on the new review days every Wednesday where very few people turn out. And I see these comments all the time. It's like, there really hasn't been any great new rock music or prog music or metal music or whatever since the 80s or since the 70s. And then, you know, you try to dig a little deeper with them, and it turns out they're really not even looking for anything new. And I think the point of this episode today is to drive home that there is lots of good new music today, but the musical landscape has changed. We don't have radio playing new music from new bands or new music from older bands. We don't have MTV playing all these videos from, you know, current bands and whatnot. We rely on what's kind of force-fed by the media, TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and Facebook. And people tend to think, well, you know, the radio, if you listen to radio, they're not playing any new music because there's no good music to be played. Well, that's not really the case. Radio has turned into a trip down nostalgia lane. And folks, there's a lot of good music out there today.
Yeah, there is.
In the genres that you know and love, if you just know the places to go look for them. So today we're going to talk a bit about where to go find this new music and why you should go find new music, especially in the genres that we cover here on Sea of Tranquility. So we're going to really talk about today. We're going to talk about hard rock and metal. We're going to talk about fusion. We're going to talk about prog rock. We're going to do a little indie rock. We're going to talk about older bands from yesteryear that we know and love that are still putting out good new music, but a lot of people ignore it because they just choose to, I'll just stick with the old classics, right? So with all that being said, Jamie has put together a little presentation for us. I'm going to have him kind of kickstart this whole conversation. So Jamie, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so whenever you see the TV behind me on, you know something is going to be sliding by. So yes, new music. Man, you know what? I could go on about how listening to new music is important to the bands. But I mean, that's common sense. These guys are out there trying to make a living, giving you great music. And I go see them live. I see them at the Rumba Cafe here in Columbus, Ohio, at Ace of Cups. And these guys that I see, well, whether it's Elder or Graveyard or whoever, are giving you quality hard rock music that's as good. I'm going to just say it, as good as anything from the 70s. All right. As good. No, it ain't. Yeah, it is. Shut up. And they're playing to like 200 people. I saw this band, Valley of the Sun, a couple weeks ago. This, you know, people say stoner rock. I hate that term. Like how Catino hates hair metal, that term. I hate the term stoner rock because, you know, they get labeled as stoner rock, but this ain't stoner rock, man. This is just good old hard rock, a little bit of Clutch, a little bit of Tesla. Huh? Tesla. Yeah. Guns N' Roses is in there. Guns N' Roses, yeah. A little bit of Soundgarden, a little bit of Sabbath. Put that in a blender. And look, this is probably their best album right here. Volume Rock. That's what the music's like. It makes you want to go about 85 miles an hour down a highway, like in the desert. Maybe that's why they call it desert rock. Listening to this music. It's not stoner music because when I'm high, I don't feel like doing shit. All right. This is high volume rock. All right. So they played to like 85 fucking people when I saw them, and I swear to God, it was a shame. How did I find out about these bands? Well, first of all, let me just tell you, 2024. Oh, I'm sorry, it's 2023. I'm getting ahead of myself. 2023 has been one of the best, personally, one of the best years ever for rock and roll for me, ever. 1963, all that 60 years. Yeah, I'm talking about 1976. I'm talking about 1964. I'm talking about 1980. I'm talking about 1991. I'm talking about all the big years. This is right up there with them. And how many new albums did I buy this year? And we're not even done with October yet. Well, the list starts right here. There's 1 through 10. This is in no order either. So there's 10 good albums that I bought. These are new albums, a lot of them by new bands. Then we go 11 to 20. We go 21 to 30. We're up to 30. 31 to 40. 41 to 51. So I bought 51 new albums, a lot of them by new bands so far in October of 2023. But hold on, I got 5 on pre-order still coming. So if I can find 56 fucking albums to buy in this year alone, you can find 3. All right? You can find maybe 4 good albums out there, for crying out loud. I'm not saying you got to go nuts like me, because there's something wrong with me. But you can buy 3 or you can find 3 or 4 out there. So how do you do it? Laszlo, how do you find like Green Lung? How do you find a band like that? Or let's see, Black Rainbows. How am I supposed to find that, you may ask? Well, I'm going to tell you how. So I know we got the Professor of Prog here on Sea of Tranquility, but I'm just going to borrow that name for a second.
There we go.
Because it's learning time, guys. It's learning time. I got my little pointer stick. How does this fucking go on? I don't know. I didn't graduate college, so I don't know. All right. If you don't eat your meat, you won't get any pudding. So, resource number 1. Sea of Tranquility. Oh, you're already there. Look at that. Half the battle is won. You're here. Pete, what do you do on Wednesdays here on Sea Tranquility?
New product reviews each and every week. Lots of
How many views you get for like a non-established artist that's somewhat new?
less than 1,000.
How many subscribers do you got?
Almost 90,000.
What the fuck? That's like 1% of you people give a shit about new music. And why are you subscribed if you ain't watching the videos? What the hell are you doing? You know what? If you don't want to watch the reviews, fine. Pete puts the album title, the artist, and he puts the genre there. Jazz fusion, stoner rock, heavy metal, power metal. If you like those genres and you don't want to click on it, at least look at the band name, go to YouTube, put in the band name, give it a listen. Sometimes I know if I like an album within 5 seconds. 5 seconds, that's all it takes. I don't got time to listen to full albums. So, and if Pete's reviewing it, and people say, why does he always give good reviews? Because Pete don't got time to listen to shit. Pete's busy. When Pete starts listening to an album and it sucks, Pete stops listening. He's not going to listen to a sucky album 5 times to come and make a video to tell you it sucks. Maybe if this was like more of a, established, where Pete had workers behind him and he had time for people to listen to shit and review it. Pete's one guy. So if Pete's reviewing it, Pete's going to like it. Maybe he'll give a bad review. Established artist where he went in and bought it because he likes the artist and he was disappointed with it. That's when you get your bad reviews. But if it's a new artist and he's reviewing it, he likes it. So yes, Sea of Tranquility. You also got the Professor of Prog, Ken Golden, on Saturdays, telling you new re-releases and new releases. So right there, this is your one-stop shop, Sea of Tranquility. These 2 guys, they look familiar. Brendon Snyder, and you got the Prog Corner right there with yourself right there, Scott. They talk about new music. Give them a try. Follow them. Listen to them. You don't have to like everything either. I'm not saying like everything. An open mind isn't liking everything. An open mind is giving everything a shot. All right. Bandcamp. Bandcamp is where you go and you buy the albums, and a lot of the money goes directly to the artist. It's great. But Bandcamp can be a maze. It's just a jumbled mess of artists on there and music. So you kind of need direction. Sometimes you can go on Bandcamp like I did earlier this year and just start clicking on shit. Let me try that. Let me try that. Let me try that. I went on there earlier this year. Within 5 minutes, I found this band, Old Mine Universe. I was like, holy shit, I just struck gold in a big ass mountain of a lot of shit. So sometimes you get lucky, but sometimes, most of the times, you need direction, like with Sea of Tranquility and these guys. I hate to bring up other channels, but I'm going to tell you my tools that I use, though, Pete. Banger TV. Blaine Smith over there, he's a funny guy. He's entertaining. Does a great job of doing Metal Monthly. At the beginning of every month, well, during the whole month, he's going through a lot of underground metal bands. And then at the beginning of each month, he tells you what's coming out that month and what he found and what's great. He gives you 5. A lot of it's extreme metal. Oh, I don't like the 3 months of metal. Fine. At the end of the 5th one is always the palate cleanser. So you got power metal, you got traditional metal, you got a little bit of AOR. Fast forward to the end on the palate cleanser. I bet you're going to find something a few times a year that you really like. It's worth the effort. So yes, Banger TV. Angry Metal Guy. Follow him on Facebook. He posts about 3, maybe 3-ish reviews a day. Do you have to like everything? No. Myself, I probably like 1 out of 18 albums that he reviews. But I tell you what, the other 17 are always interesting just to look at. You click on it, he gives you the review, he gives you the rating at the end, and he gives you a song to listen to. It's so simple. Listen to it. I don't like that one, but look, the band looks funny. Look how scary they look. You're always going to get something out of it. Or look at that album cover. That album cover's badass. You're always going to get something out of it. Then when you click on it, ooh, I like that. The cherry on top. See? And see, the journey looking for good music can be as fun as finding good music. Next, Class 666, Mr. Doom. Follow him on YouTube. This channel posts about 7 albums a day. Boom, boom, boom. It's not all doom either. It could be proggy. It could be just solid hard rock. It could be a little bit more extreme, a little bit less extreme. It's always right there. Look, here's the thing. The stoner rock again. Hendrix was stoner rock. Sabbath was stoner rock. Zeppelin was kind of stoner rock. We don't call it stoner rock, though, do we? We just call it classic old hard rock. So maybe we need to get rid of this stoner rock today with a lot of these bands because it's just good classic, good hard rock. Follow 666 Mr. Doom. Oh, it says 666, a bunch of demon stuff. No, stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it. All right. Doom charts. I just found out about this 2 days ago. Doom charts. So this thing, you click on it once a month. So they just did it a few days ago for September. They give you 40 albums for September. Right now, if you go on there, doomcharts.com, and they label 40 great albums that came out the previous month. For over half of them, they give you a little write-up, and they give you a song to listen to. How easy is it? I went through it, and I saw this one band called Demons My Friends, and they even put the subgenre of what they are. It said Doom Pop. Doom Pop. My God, I gotta listen to this. Doom Pop. What the fuck is that? I listened to it. I listened to that album 3 times in a row and bought it right there. Bam. Love me some Doom Pop. Might be my new favorite genre. So yeah, go there and try. Go on YouTube right now and listen to Demons My Friends. It's like doomy stuff, but with hooks and a little bit upbeat here and there. You'll love it. I swear to God, you'll
just think of the numbers right there. He gives you 40 albums.
40.
It's
A
a lot
month?
more than that, right? It just goes to show you how much is being released every single month. by
God,
all
I
the
can't keep
labels.
track. I have listened to good stuff and had to pass on it because I don't have time in my life to listen to it all. I don't have time. And you go, oh, there's no good music out there. I'm passing on the good shit. If you guys listen to the shit I passed on, you're still getting 4-star music. What's next here? Amazon. How did you get Amazon? That's just where I buy my shit at. You go on Amazon and you buy some of these other albums that you just learned on the previous tools. And before you put in your basket, scroll down. Other cool customers who bought this also bought. And then you just go swipe to the left and you look at other cool people like you. And why are you cool? Because you're there buying cool shit. Oh, they also bought these other bands. So let me try them out. You might find something. Independent record stores. I know not everybody is as lucky as me to have 6 independent record stores within like 5 miles of my house. I get it. And not everybody's going to have one like Used Kids by me, where the owner likes this kind of music, modern day hard rock, stoner rock, desert rock, whatever.
Long live Used Kids.
Yes, Used Kids is great. He has a whole section called hard rock, and it's all the ripple music, heavy psych sounds, reissues of proto metal from the late 60s and early 70s. It's all right there. I bought Geezer there from the Hudson Valley area a few weeks ago, and it's awesome. I know, but if you go to a record store, maybe something like that will pop up. Maybe they'll have a hard rock section. Maybe you can talk to one of the workers. Pick the guy with the long hair. Talk to him. He might be able to direct you somewhere, you know. Independent record stores. And I go to shows with the owner of Used Kids too. We went to go see Valley of the Sun together. And 1000 Mods. Oh, how do you find out about Valley of the Sun and 1000 Mods? The owner of the record store told me about them. He said, you want to go see them? I got in my Jeep after he told me, YouTubed them. I walked back in the store and I said, I'll see you Monday. Ripple Music, you can go directly to these record labels, their websites, and they have right there the banner. Oh, look at that. Street date, August 25th, Sun King. Oh, that's a cool song by the Cult. Maybe they named themselves after the Cult song, and I like the Cult, so let me give them a try. See how the old noggin works? And they give you all this stuff to click on, and then you just see new releases, things coming up, things that were recently released, and you try them out. The radio is not going to play this shit for you, all right? The radio is giving you the same 17 classic rock bands, maybe Rival Sons, maybe Greta Van Fleet. Greta Van Fleet, they say, well, we never listened to Led Zeppelin. I believe them. I think their parents did. I think their parents did, and they're telling them what to do, but I don't think they ever listened to Led Zeppelin. So, yeah, there you go. New music is not going to be on the radio. You got to go find it. It's really good. I promise you. So, lesson fucking over.
That was outstanding.
That was. That's exactly that's the best way to frame this whole discussion. So, Jamie, I thank you for putting all that together. So let's move over to Scott from a prog perspective. And Scott, maybe you can talk a little bit about how important the new prog music scene is. You and I have talked privately about what's going on over in Scandinavia.
Yeah.
And that's as much to do with the hard rock scene in Sweden as it is Norway for prog. So Scott.
Oh, absolutely. There is definitely something going on there. You know, the whole black metal thing in Scandinavia, the whole spirit that music mattered way more than it did to, you know, a lot of people over here at that time. It spilled over into the prog scene, and something is definitely going on in Norway. I just gotta say, like, 4 of my top 5 albums this year have been from Norway, but you know, I do a prog rock channel, and that's all we talk about. That's all we focus on. And just like you, a large percentage of my regular viewers kind of tune out whenever I talk about a new band. You know, if I'm talking about Yes or Genesis or ELP or whatever, the numbers are great. But when we talk about anybody else, nobody seems to be that into it. And in the comments, you always hear about, You know, there hasn't been any good prog since 1980. And, you know, I felt that way once too. So I can be a real advocate for new prog in that once upon a time, I would have been that troll if we had an internet in 1981, man. I would have been like, no, this new prog sucks. That would have been me, but we didn't, luckily. But so I get it. I understand. And, you know, I point to this record right here for people that are having trouble, you know, connecting with the new prog. It's this little thing that John Anderson did with Roy Stolt from the Flower Kings called Invention of Knowledge. They did this thing like 6-7 years ago, and it really is an excellent entry point for people that are on the fence about it. It's completely modern prog, but it's got that voice that you know, and that maybe can help you to get into it a little bit. And then from there, maybe you will want to investigate Roy Stolt's day job and get into some Flower Kings. For me, it was actually Transatlantic that got me back into modern prog. But you got to have something, you know, you got to have an entry point, something to help you slide in. Because again, I get it. Back in the 90s, I listened to Glass Hammer, and I listened to a lot of those bands like Spock's Beard, and it wasn't hitting me. The Flower Kings didn't hit me. So I get it when I get comments about people saying that modern prog isn't as good as it used to be. It is actually. But what's happened is that back in the 70s, nobody had done that stuff before. So yeah, it was kind of new. And you take that element away, and yeah, then people start to lose interest. I get it. But if you take another look, I contend that there's actually more good music coming out in 2023 than there was in 1973. You were talking about the records you bought. Here's what I bought this year so far. That's upside down. No, that's right side up. That's 70. And then there's another like 25 on there. So I've almost bought like 100 albums this year. It's just an amazingly deep well. And I understand it's a little bit hard because it's almost too much. So like Jamie was talking about, how do you find this music? I contend that it's got to matter to you, because if it doesn't, if you don't care about it, you're not going to take the time or the effort to do any of the things Jamie was talking about. But it's got to matter to you, and it only will matter to you if you hear that one band that just kind of, you know, does something in your brain. And I'm going to suggest to all the people out there that you check out Wobbler. If you're on the fence about modern prog rock, check out Wobbler. And if you don't think there's anything worth investigating further, that's fine. But if you hear something you like out of that band, then go ahead and do all the things Jamie talked about. Check out these bands. There's so many out there. And we talk about how it's, you know, so siloed now. And if you want to find a very specific type of music, whether it's doom pop, there's a doom pop scene out there probably somewhere on the internet, man. And that just blows my mind. Yeah, it's never going to be like it was back in the 70s. You know, Pete talked about how radio doesn't play new, you know, bands music anymore. Well, you know what? We were kind of like that before Nirvana dropped Nevermind. Remember, we were in that graveyard of classic rock, and the only new music you heard is if Eric Clapton had put out a new record, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you had this new era of radio playing new rock bands again. It hadn't been done in almost 10 years. And I'm telling you, all is not lost, Pete. There is hope in the world. We actually can get to a point where we're playing real band. You mentioned Greta Van Fleet. Yeah, whatever the origin story, they're playing rock music. Crown Lands out of Canada. I have hope and faith that rock music is not dead, and we will see a renaissance. We got to keep fighting the good fight. And, you know, if it matters to you, then take the time and do a little bit of research, do a little bit of work, because we're kind of in a new golden era. If you just peel back the layers a little bit and really pay attention. And we need to support these bands, and we need to support the brick and mortar independent record stores. Absolutely. We need to advocate for them, because that's where a lot of the good stuff can happen and percolate. And yeah, I'm an advocate for new prog. I'm an advocate for new rock. I always will be. So yeah, obviously I'm in the right place here today.
Yeah, you mentioned, Scott, you mentioned this whole idea of today there is more
Yeah,
than it was back then.
so much more.
There is a lot more. There is a lot more. Maybe there's almost too much to choose from.
It's a lot.
But I think one of the traps that a lot of people fall into, and I hear this all the time, it's like, well, a lot of these newer bands, they're trying to sound like the older classic bands that I love. Why don't I just stick to listening to the old classic bands that I love? Why go listen to another band that sounds like Yes or that sounds like Black Sabbath or whatever when I have the real thing? And it's like maybe the difference in us is that, you know, I'll use Black Sabbath as an example. I love Black Sabbath. They're one of my favorite bands of all time. I've heard all those Black Sabbath albums a million times in my life. I still will listen to them, but I love that sound. I personally don't have an issue with a younger band playing in that similar style because I really like that style.
Yeah.
To me, limiting myself to only ever listening to Black Sabbath doing that style of heavy rock, I that's not something I can live with. I want to hear more of this. And
I get a little, it's a little tough in my particular subgenre, Pete, in that prog rock. Well, prog stands for progressive. This stuff, you know, this retro prog stuff. And, you know, I lean into the retro stuff. I don't care. I love that sound. Like you were saying, I think the sounds of the 70s, that's never been equaled, probably never will. That doesn't mean that the bands of today aren't every bit as good. They bring something different and special to what they're doing. Every band is different. So there's personality in every band. They're not mimicking or copying anybody. They're taking inspiration from, and hey, I love me some Yes and Genesis. So if a band is citing them as influences, then good on them. And yeah, so I do understand that some people have a problem with the retro prog as being an oxymoron. But, you know, get over it, guys. We're talking about, do you want to listen to the same 20 records for the rest of your life until you're in your grave? Or do you want to explore what's going on now? And there's a lot out there, I'm telling you.
Yeah,
and,
great point.
You know, Jamie got me excited about some of those bands he was talking about in his segment. You know, so just open your mind and open your heart first. You gotta be in the right mind space.
Great points. And here's the thing, and I never understood this. So a lot of people complain about the more recent prog stuff well, they're not really doing anything different. They're not really progressing from where things were in the 70s. But how about all those prog bands from the 70s who tried to progress and to do something different in the 80s, incorporating more modern production techniques and maybe elements of pop and whatever? The loyal prog fans hated that stuff.
And we cut their heads off.
Right? No, we don't want you to change.
Nope.
So why is it wrong that current prog bands are doing stuff that sounds like the classic stuff?
True.
Right?
Good point.
Right? I mean, it's kind of like that's a little bit hypocritical there, right? So
a little bit.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to turn it over to George to kind of take us talk a little bit about fusion, and of course we have this very cool show on the channel called For Fusion Friday, which you know, highlights not only some classic fusion albums, but a lot of more modern stuff that, you know, most people have never even heard of before. And I know George and I have talked quite a bit over the years about how some of the best fusion ever has been made over the last 20, 30 years, but nobody would know because people only remember those, you know, Weather Report, Mahavishnu, Return to Forever, Miles Davis albums, right? So George, I'll turn it over to you a little bit to talk about fusion.
Yeah, it's the kissing cousin of prog, because
absolutely
there's the scene as the one time when everything was great, the 70s, and it's seen as everything since then just doesn't measure up, and it's trying to sound like that, or it doesn't measure up to that. That's a mindset. I mean, I believe in Occam's razor. If there's multiple explanations, it's usually the simplest one. Now, is it more simple to say you just parted from that, or that everybody that was good at one thing was good 50 years ago and now nobody can do that thing as well? That's not the more likely explanation. It's you. You know, if you don't go into it with the mindset of wanting to like it, being open to liking it, you're not gonna like it as much. Like Scott was saying, it's the retro thing. That's it in a nutshell. They're trying to sound like old bands because that's what you always say you want, and then they do it and you're like, oh, it's nothing new. Well, you didn't want anything new, so kind of in a catch-22 there. It's especially true with fusion. I know so many guys that are just like, just when you talk to them, you can tell they're not open to it. 70 stuff, that's the shit. 70 stuff. Nobody can touch that. And even the artists from that era that are still making new records, you just get that look in their face like, you know. Granted, most of those aren't as good, but you're not going to know that if you don't listen. You're not giving it a try. You're not even in the conversation. You need to listen to it at the very least. And that I think there's like two groups of people: the people that just throw their hands up because they're not getting stuff put on their plate that's that good, or the ones that actually tell you, yeah, I've checked out new stuff and none of it's as good. That's a mindset thing. I mean, you got to get past that. There's just as much, like he said, there's just as much good stuff as ever.
And I wonder how many people that actually claim, oh, I've checked out all these new bands, and I wonder what percentage of those people are being actually honest about having checked out said, groups. I question that sometimes.
I got a couple of my 70s nostalgia friends. I've been present when they've checked out a new band, and that equates to half a song basically.
Yeah.
And
right, half a song. That's a lot.
Well, because that's the way you can do things nowadays. People will go and say, "Oh, I investigated this album or this band," and they'll go on YouTube or Spotify and they'll listen to 30 seconds and be like, of the first song, like, that didn't grab me. I'm not going to bother with this. Well, let's go back 40, 50 years ago when you got a new album by a band, and George and I talk about this all the time. Let's go back to the early 80s, right? You go out and buy this album by this unknown British band called Iron Maiden, right? They were new to you at the time. Nobody knew who they were. You listen to that first album and you listen to the whole thing, and maybe you listen to it again and again. All of a sudden you decided, oh, I really like this, but you spent time with it. People don't spend time with anything anymore. And it's like now all of a sudden, so what was new to you that you would give a chance 40, 50 years ago, now you don't want to give that same chance to a new band that is new to you. Everything you know and love was new to you at one point in time, right? Yeah. Everything.
Can I add one thing too?
Yeah.
A lot of people will say, oh, I'm 62 years old. I don't need to listen to a bunch of kids playing heavy rock to me now. I'll just go listen to my first Maiden album. Guess what? That first Maiden album was made by a bunch of kids. It might have been in 1980, but they were still kids. And you're 62 listening to kids. What's the diff?
Right. Yeah. I mean, we did an episode on 4 Fusion Friday last month on Japanese fusion. Okay. And George, you'll agree with me. There is so much good Japanese fusion, right? So that will blow people's minds. But it's like, oh, but it's so far away. The stuff is hard to get. It's like there are ways to get and listen to all this stuff. I mean, really, to think that there's no good fusion music being made that's not from the 70s. I mean, you could just pick that one country and there's a wealth of it there.
We're done with excuses. It's 2023, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the definite upsides of this era is that you don't have to plunk down $30 anymore. You can go online and listen to it, and they're not even taking advantage of that. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's move over to Brendon here. Older bands, classic bands who are putting out new music. I've heard it many times where, and I brought a whole stack of CDs fairly recently from bands who have been around for a long time: Megadeth, Metal Church, Iron Maiden, Hearts, Hawkwinds, Clutch, Extreme, Ozzy Osbourne, Jethro Tull, Michael Schenker, the list goes on, Scorpion, Saxon, Uriah Heep, Styx. I mean, these are bands who have been around, some longer than others, but have been actively putting out music all the time, like over the last 20, 30 years. But I come across so many people who are like, Styx, yeah, the last album I really liked from them was Paradise Theater. They've just done junk since then. I'm like, well, have you listened to their last 2 albums? Oh, you mean they're still together? I didn't even know they were still together. Yeah, so there's this mentality with people in a certain age group, and I'll say 45 and older. I get it. The 70s and 80s were amazing. We were kids. We were growing up, high school, college. We really took to the music. That's all we really had to do in our lives is go to school, listen to music, hang out with our friends, right? Whatever. And then you go to college, then you graduate, maybe you get married, you have kids, you get a full-time job. and all of a sudden you're not following your favorite bands from anymore. You're still pulling out those Led Zeppelin 4 and Quadrophenia and all those classic albums, but to you, the music world has just kind of stopped. Maybe you still listen to the radio. Radio doesn't play new music, right? They just plays all classics, and you settle into this familiar, comfortable blanket of a life where you're just listening to the same bands and the same albums over and over and over again. And the thought of something new from Styx doesn't even cross your mind. So Brendon, maybe talk a little bit about why there's a lot of really good, and why and how there is still really great new music from some of these legacy bands, and why should we still pay attention, right?
Yeah.
Why should we seek these out?
Absolutely. My taste in music is really wide. So I'm into everything from, back in the 70s. I grew up in the 80s, so I love all that stuff, whether it's, alternative rock, or it's, pop music, or gets into glam metal, heavy metal, then moving into grunge and so forth. And I, growing up with those things, I know those albums inside and out. And I don't want to listen to that album again and again. And if I turn on the radio, they play that same big popular song by that artist over and over and over. So I'm tired of that. Not that I don't think that it's great, not that I'm never going to pull it out, kind of a thing. But for me, at least, I want other stuff. And so I've always looked towards what these bands are doing. But if these bands aren't doing things, let's say that a lot of these bands did stop making music for a long period of time. Jethro Tull took a 23-year time period off from making new original music before coming back with 2 albums in 2 years' time. And those albums, in my opinion, are just as strong as some of the earlier material. But a lot of people didn't search anything out. The thing is, during the time frame where a lot of these bands take time off, they're doing other stuff. There's either solo albums, there's side projects. And for me, those are things that you can dig into as well. And so I'm always trying to kind of keep my mind open on that. And Scott, you touched on it where you said with for Flower Kings, you actually got into Transatlantic first.
Yeah.
And I did the same thing actually with that. I got into Transatlantic because of Mike Portnoy, because I was a Dream Theater fan, didn't know anything about Transatlantic, but I like Transatlantic. Oh, they're a super group. They
Yeah.
come from 4 other bands.
Let me check those other bands out, right?
That's right. And so that's one of the easiest ways to find new music from these artists, is to say, one of the best ones that I like recently was Black Swan, made up of a bunch of 80s rockers, glam metal artists, if you will. You've got Reb Beach from Winger in here. You've got Robin McCauley from Michael Shankar Group in here. Jeff Pilson. So lots of cool guys who have come together in this. And if this had come out back in the 80s, they would have been huge. It is just that good, but people don't want to check it out because it's not under the name Dokken or Winger or something like that. So they look past it. But there is actually so much good music coming out today. You touched on Styx, and that's why I'm wearing the Styx shirt. I think that this album here is literally one of the best things they have ever done. And they took a long hiatus off, I think a good maybe 15 years nearly, between doing Cyclorama and then doing this. Yes, there was a cover album in the middle of that, but new original music, having done the concept album in between that as well. But these 2 things here just blew my mind when they came out. And yes, you have to be open to it, but I want to touch on that idea of why are people not being open to it? And Pete, you mentioned it, and I think everyone else has touched on it briefly here, which is growing up, first of all, we didn't have the internet. Wasn't established the way that it was. Even if you had access to a modem and stuff, the finding of things wasn't out there. We didn't have Google. We didn't have Wikipedia, that kind of stuff. But how did you find music back in the 70s and the 80s? You went to your local record store and you saw an album, and that album cover spoke to you. Maybe you heard something on the radio. Maybe your best friend heard something and told you about it. but you weren't going on and sampling 15 seconds of a song and deciding you didn't like it. And Jamie, while you mentioned about being able to hear something and know if you like it in 15 seconds, I do agree with you on that in general. But let's say it's your favorite band from back in the 70s making the new album today. When I put on this Styx album here, I have to say the first time I heard it, not impressed at all. I was just sort of, what is this? Each song is made up of 3-4 songs. Just when I'm getting into something, they change it. I just don't know what's going on with this thing. But I got to the end of the album and I thought, I didn't understand that. I want to start it over. And I listened to it a second time. By the time I got to it, the end of the second time, I was into it enough that I said, I want to hear it a third time. By the time I was done with it 3 times through, I was sold. But that's a long period of listening. And I know everyone doesn't have that time.
Yeah.
But when you bought the album back in the 70s, back in the 80s, and you were buying it based on a review, never heard anything, recommendation from a friend, or just that killer album cover that spoke to you, you gave it more time because you plunked down hard-earned money. On the internet today, it's all free. Even if you don't have streaming service like Apple or Spotify that you're paying the subscription for, and I would tell everybody, I am a hardcore physical media person, but I still have a streaming service that I pay for to be able to check out singles as they drop, albums that drop at midnight when my new copy isn't actually arriving physically till the next day in the mail, like all that sort of stuff, to be able to have it. And even albums that I'm on the fence about buying, I say, well, I'm not going to buy it or pre-order it like I normally do and get it delivered to me on Friday, which is one of the greatest things about Amazon. I love my brick and mortar stores, but I can have my new release music delivered to me on release day. I'm at work. I don't have time to stop at a record store. When I get home, I've got my brand new music in front of me. And there's cool things like that within the internet that I think a lot of older music fans who didn't grow up with the internet don't embrace. And part of it, I would say, hey, guys, those of you that don't know that you can buy music on Amazon, or the fact that what's been pointed out by Jamie on Amazon, where you buy, Styx or I love this new Paul Rogers album. It's been 24 years between him doing something and he's back making an amazing album. But you buy this and scroll down to see what other people bought, and you're going to find something in those. There's a lot of great things about internet, online resources that you've got to take advantage to. And I think it's getting those older music fans over the hurdle to say, I'm not going to be so scared of this, or I'm going to take the chance on this and see where it can lead. And I think there's a number of ways to go through that can spring that new music on you. And the new music that's coming out, where I don't know why people are thinking it isn't as good, it can't be as good, but I also posit the question, why does it have to be as good? Why does it have to be match the quality of the 1973 album that we love? I'm a huge Yes fan. And their latest 2 records, after the band taking a 7-8 year sabbatical, not doing anything, have come back and made 2 albums in 2 years. And a lot of people just dogged on those. And they don't sound like the old stuff. My favorite album being 1973's Closer to the Edge. I get it. It's not going to be that. It's different guys. But who's to say what's being done isn't good? It's still great music to hear. And I just think a lot of people have to step into this and say, okay, I've got the old hit albums to listen to. I can go back to them anytime I want, but let's check out this other stuff here and let's give it a real shot. I think buying the album is key. Going on, sampling something, these people are missing out because it may not click with you. I'm a huge Styx fan. It took 3 rounds of listening to the album before I just was head over heels with it, naming it my #1 album that came out that year in my year and countdown.
I think I had it at #2 for the year, Brandon.
It's top 5 for me.
I loved it.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
And didn't you just have that experience with the new Ann Wilson?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm watching, Brandon. I'm watching.
Yeah, you're so right. And I listened to that and I said initially when I picked it up, didn't do anything for me, too mellow. 3 days later, I pop it back on because I don't want to just dismiss it. And I don't know what happened, but it clicked. And I listened to it 3 times through. That's now in the running to make my top 20 for the end of the year. And physically buying and owning some of these things gets you to do that, gets you to pop something back on. Whereas, you know, you don't have something in front of you staring at you. When I get a new album, it sits in front of my stereo for at least the first week of release before it might move to somewhere else. Fantastic album. Trevor Rabin just came out on Friday. For those of you saying there's no good prog out there, if you like this, and this is the 80s
I love it.
sounding. I know a lot of prog fans didn't get into that. This is excellent.
Very
He
good.
hasn't made a vocal solo album in 34 years. 1989 was his last one. Did an instrumental album in between there. But I didn't have high hope for this, and I cannot believe how good this is.
Yeah.
And this one spoke to me right away. But there's great music out there, and on maybe a slightly different, not topic, but area of this discussion, and it got talked about early on by you, Jamie, going and seeing these bands and nobody's coming out to them kind of a thing. There's a lot of bands that don't promote the new material. Iron Maiden's a great one where when they release a new album, the first 5 or 6 songs of the set that night are the new album. And they alternate the tour where after the kind of album promotion version, they go out and do all the hits. And they say, hey, you don't want to hear the new stuff? There'll be the hits tour later on and you can go to that. But the fans have actually embraced it. They've said, okay, I want to see Iron Maiden. I know this is new stuff, no big deal. And I'll go see the hit stuff when I see the hit stuff. But for bands that release the new album, take AC/DC, and they haven't toured in 7 years, but I mean, when they would go out on the road, they might play 2 songs from a new album. By the cycle of the next album, they play nothing from the previous album, and they play a couple from the new. So you get all the hits.
And sometimes that's not the band's fault. I'm gonna go to bat for the artist. A lot of times these are promoters stepping in ahead of time saying, we need to see the set list before we're underwriting this tour.
They want
and the band has like, we want to go on tour, but we gotta please the promoter before we can, hit the road. So
you're absolutely right. Even artists are doing it though. Bret Michaels of Poison just went out on the road, and I forget who he took with him. I don't know if it was Night Ranger or who it was, but it was the all hits tour, and he had specified the 3 bands that went out with him were only going to play the hits. And that's cool. I mean, fine, go and do that. But at the same time, I think it's hurting the new music because live shows is one of the key ways to get that music. You're a fan of the band, so you go to see them to hear the hits. And if they don't play anything new in it, but all those people who leave during the new song to go get their beer, use the bathroom, don't do that. Stick around and hear that song. Leave during one of the songs you already know.
That apparently is a major issue here. That's like a North America thing, because I talk to a lot of people over in like the UK and Europe, and it's not quite the same. And if you look at like some of the set lists for classic bands when they play over there, they play a mix of classic stuff and newer stuff, and the audience is a little more accepting. I talk to a lot of people who go, and Brendon, you basically just said it. They'll go to see a band like Foreigner or a band like Styx or a band like Kansas, and or like Blue. I've told the story a million times. I went to see Uriah Heep and Blue Oyster Cult within a short time of each other, and literally I saw people get upset that they were playing newer music. I'm like, I only want to hear the 70s music. Let's go to the bar. And I'm like, really? It's like, are you that close-minded that like the only reason you want to come here is for nostalgia purposes, right? And what really sucks too is like a band, one of these classic bands will have a new album. It'll be on sale at the merch table, but yet they're not playing any songs from the new album. So how is that going to prompt people in the audience to say, oh, I really like those 2 songs they played. Let me go see if I can go buy the album, right?
Right.
They're not going to buy it if they're not hearing any new music.
Guns N' Roses, who did their reunion tour starting back in 2016, put in a bunch of stuff from Chinese Democracy, despite Duff McKagan and Slash not being a part of it. I'm a huge Guns N' Roses fan, so I loved that they were playing something from all the eras. The album had only sold gold, 500,000 copies in the US. over the course of the tour, with them playing that, the album has doubled in sales and has gone platinum. And that's in today's age where most stuff is streaming, and you got to do, I don't know, 100 streams or something to equal the sale of one album kind of thing. So it's actually a lot more people are hearing this stuff to equate to another 500,000 in album sales. But they put it in and they play it religiously, and it's causing people to go out and check out this album that they didn't give a chance to because it wasn't the original lineup. But when you're hearing it, it's no different than when the radio and MTV used to shove artists down our throat. You might not like that music. I did not like Pearl Jam when it first started getting played, but that got shoved down my throat so much that at a certain point, I got on board with it. And I'm glad that I did. And I ended up really liking all the albums that then came after 10, much more than 10, because I kind of felt it was shoved down my throat. But we don't have that today. There's nothing out there doing
rock
that
music anyway. Yeah, not for rock at all.
Yeah. And so it's really the live show. The live show has that opportunity to play that new song every night to whatever the group of people, whether it's 200 people, 1,000 people, or 10,000 people, to get it out there. And so, yeah, there are promoters that won't book you if you're going to do certain things. And then there's bands like Kiss that say, why record new material? Because no one's going to buy it. Nobody wants to hear it at our shows. If we just play the hits, that's all that anyone wants. But what happened to the creative spark in these bands that needed to record, needed to put something out? And so those bands that are doing it, Styx, Jethro Tull, all these other great bands, Winger came back after 9-year absence. It's, we do need to support that. We do need to say, hey, these guys put a lot of time and energy into it. I like the stuff they did before. I'm going to give this a shot.
You mentioned something a couple minutes ago that I think also is really key when it comes to like the legendary and legacy bands. Lineup changes, not the original lineup. One guy's dead. There's only one surviving member and all these other guys. It's not. It's a glorified cover band. I mean, I think that plays a lot into it too, because I think a lot of older fans only are loyal to that lineup that they loved, and anything less than that isn't legitimate. Right. And I personally, I understand that thought process. I don't necessarily agree with it, because I know a lot of, I'll use Blue Oyster Cult as an example. Blue Oyster Cult has been around forever. They went 20 some odd years without releasing a new studio album. They've had a lot of lineup changes, but the lineup they have today has been pretty solid for quite a number of years. They released one of their best albums in decades a couple of years ago. It's my favorite album of the year.
Returns.
But still so many like long-time Blue Oyster Cult fans just refuse to listen to it. They're like, it's not the original lineup. It's not really Blue Oyster Cult.
Right.
And I think that's a little short-sighted.
And we get that a lot in the prog sphere, being that one of the leading lights of the prog genre is Yes. And the half the prog community is a no John, no yeser, and the other half is a little more open-minded to, hey, we'll give a listen. If the album's good, we'll like it. If not, we won't. But a big chunk of the prog community has a real problem with lineup changes. And the longer a genre has been around and a band's been around, the more likely there's going to be some kind of lineup changes. So I think we just have to be a little bit more tolerant of it as music fans. The bands we love, there weren't a whole lot of bands that didn't suffer a bunch of lineup changes along the way. So I think it's an overblown argument, but I think it's important in the minds of a lot of people.
Yeah. What I love to remind people about, like with Yes and Deep Purple, is the lineups that got popular weren't the ones that started the band.
Yeah, exactly.
The same way. And it's, if you're sitting there saying, well, it's not the original lineup, in most cases, what you're talking about isn't the original members anyway.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so why are you sitting back and saying nobody else can possibly come in and be a good musician, a good foil to the rest of the guys in the group? Dokken with John Levin in the guitar slot for 20 years, longer than George Lynch, longer than any of the other members that have been in there. So some of these bands have members in there that have been longer than the original guys, and they're not given any support, or they're given their due or anything. And so why is that? Why do people just brush that off?
I mean, with Scott, we talked about Kansas a couple of weeks ago in another program.
Another great one.
You know, here you have Ronnie Platt, who's now been the singer of Kansas for a number of years now. What is almost a decade, or it is a decade. And there are still people who are like, well, I can't listen to Kansas without Steve Walsh. We know how great Steve Walsh was. Steve Walsh was vocal. His voice was shot in the late 80s. And people complain how he couldn't sing anymore. So, but yet they're not accepting of someone else who can now sing all those songs that Steve couldn't for many, many years because it's not Steve. It's like,
trust me, you don't want Steve Walsh as your lead singer right now. You don't.
No, you don't.
Ronnie Platt is doing a great job, by the way. Just an amazing vocalist. And it's funny how they bash, no original members, but we seem to give Opeth a free pass.
Yeah. And
we seem to give Gong a free pass.
Yeah.
But somehow is just this fake phony tribute
Yes is
band
up here.
there's
That's
no original
why,
members.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah. It's insane.
Can I add about the radio?
Say, Pete, our only issue with the replacement member is the replacement good? That's the only thing that matters.
That's all that should matter, right? Yep. Jamie.
Just one thing about the radio, because a lot of people out there might be saying, we got a radio station here that plays new rock and it sucks. All of it. Yeah. When they're shoving down bands like Five Finger Death Punch down your throat, it's awful. I know, but I swear to God that the other music they're not playing is nothing like that shit. You create your own world that you live in. If you listen to regular rock radio, you're going to think music sucks. If you listen to your same 270 CDs over and over, you're going to live in a small box. If you sit there and watch the news every day and get angry at your TV, you're going to live in an angry world. But if you're out there looking for new music, you're going to be in a world that's always expanding. And I'm a helpless romantic. I still think my favorite album is out there that hasn't been made yet. I'm always looking for my next favorite album. You're like, well, it will never be in my DNA, like the old stuff. This Chemist album, Hunted, came out in 2016. This is in my DNA, this album. I was 47 when it came out, and it made its way in. So it's possible.
Yeah, 100%. But you have to be willing to let that happen, right?
Yeah, right.
That's the whole thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think the moral of the story today here is that there is lots of tremendous new music out there by newer and older bands. You just have to be willing and open to accept it, investigate it, and give it a shot. If you're expecting the media to promote some of these bands like we're talking about, that's not what's going on today. I think we've covered the fact that rock music is not at the top of everybody's mind today, but there are so many bands and so many albums coming out. I mean, look at the numbers that Jamie and Scott were talking about how many albums they bought this year. I'm sure everybody on this panel today, if you really stopped and counted all the albums that we bought this year, it's a lot.
Or that we get sent to us to review.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's a lot. It's quite a lot. I saw a comment from a very loyal, regular SOT viewer the other day in one of our programs, and he said that he can't think of one album that really knocked his socks off this year. And I'm like,
what are you listening to then?
I got 17 tied for number one.
Right. I mean, and I trust this person because he's here all the time. He comes on the channel all the time and he seems to know a lot, but I'm like, so really nothing like just really inspired you this year? And I find that hard to believe. Because
the new Spirit Adrift, everybody else, if we had a party and everybody who contributes on Sea of Tranquility was there and we put on the new Spirit Adrift, nobody would complain. It has something for everyone.
Yeah. Yep. I agree.
Yeah. I feel like if somebody makes that comment, like, I haven't heard anything that really got me going this year, I feel like I hadn't done my job. That would have hurt my heart a little bit, Pete, if somebody had said that to me, to be honest with you, because here we are working our tails off, trying to give people, all this amazing new music that's coming out. And there's definitely something out there for everybody. The music of 2023 is just as good as it was back in the heyday of the 70s and 80s. Like you said, you just got to open your heart, open your minds, take a little bit of time. You'll find it.
There's
George,
totally been a resurgence going on, in my opinion, with these bands, with Deep Purple and Styx coming back, Jethro Tull making some of the best albums of their careers. I don't know what's going on, all through the early 2020, it seemed like a lot of these bands didn't have any desire to get out there and make new material. I don't know why per se, but what it has been happening now in the last, maybe 5 years or so is just been this amazing resurgence and quality of material, and with a good return to form on a lot of this music. So for people saying they can't find it, it's out there and it's happening. And definitely check out the stuff that's dropping today. Maybe you tried stuff in the late 90s and the early 2000s and you weren't into it because those bands were trying to sound like the modern era that was going on at the time. The bands, what they're doing today, they're not trying to sound modern. They're trying to be themselves. And a lot of them have just dropped all that. They're going to record what they want, and it's coming out really good.
Yeah,
that's right. Evership, another example. Love these guys. So much great music going on right now around the world.
Just as good as the stuff in the 70s. If Led Zeppelin 4 dropped today as is, it would be on Bandcamp, lost in that maze of music.
Completely.
Stairway to Heaven would be a video on YouTube with 970 views. It would. That's the way it would be. I swear to God.
Yeah. It's different. Times are different. The record labels are different, the way they promote things and who they're signing. And George, I know you had a comment before. So
yeah, there's something important that just kind of came up. Somebody said, it's important that the people like you guys that talk about music, you love music enough that you made a channel, that you have the that you're an influence. Somebody's listening to you. So if you have a guy who's talking about a genre of music and he's saying everything good was 40 years ago, you're a disservice to that genre because you're telling everybody there's nothing worth your time. Everything's in the rearview mirror. And I think a lot of these people don't realize that. When you think you're being a lover of the genre, talking about all these great records, and I don't doubt that you feel that those are the greatest records, but you are tacitly saying you can basically ignore everything that's out today. And
great point.
That's dangerous.
It is, but then chasing views is always dangerous, and that's what we try real hard to be careful of on YouTube. Is we watch the numbers, but at the same time, I don't care. I'm gonna keep talking about modern prog every single week on the channel because it's what gets me excited. I'm not gonna be listening to the same 20 albums till the day I die. Not gonna happen.
Those people that say that there's no good music coming out, I only like the stuff from the 80s. The last time they did anything good was, a long time ago. I always question whether they are real fans or not. If you only like a particular thing, then it's like you like that album or you like that sound, but you're not a fan of the band. If you were a fan of the band, you'd follow what they do and you would hear the growth and the things that they're doing with it and want to stay with it. Yeah. So I always kind of question that about people who come down so hard on these bands claiming they're hardcore fans, but not wanting to have anything to do with the new stuff.
Do you like nostalgia or are you a motherfucking fan of rock music?
Yeah. The other thing for the people that I can't find it, people, I think the most common way we found bands back in the day was magazines and our friends. So you have to recreate that because your friends from then you're probably not friends with, and they're probably giving up on music too. You oldsters have to get over this thing with Facebook sucks. I don't want to be on Facebook. That is a connection that is valuable. You can like all the bands you used to like, check out bands that they like on their page. You can get into specialized groups if you're one of these people that only likes power metal. There's power metal groups out there that talk about a lot of new bands. Yeah. You got to take advantage of what's in front of you. You can't just throw your hands up and say, "Oh, I'm not getting it foisted on me like I used to." It's different.
Don't tell your Aunt Minnie you're even on Facebook. Don't tell if you don't want to see Aunt Minnie's cat videos and stuff. Just follow the bands you like and the music styles you like.
We'll be your friends.
That's right.
You don't
follow
need
Sea of Tranquility. Come to Let's Get Physical, where it's all about physical media. Do that.
I mean, how many times, I mean, it's a great point, George. And how many times, like in the last week alone, have I been recommended something either by a band that I have liked on Facebook, or a band that, you know, we reviewed that we have some sort of relationship with, or George sending me a link to something, or Jamie sending me a link to something, or something that Scott's just reviewed, or something that Brendon's just reviewed. It happens every day.
Yeah.
Like, every day. It's like, you know, it's almost impossible if you embrace certain things like social media, for example. If you're someone who says, I just can never find anything new, I don't know where to look. Well, to George's point, just set up a Facebook account simply for that. You don't have to sit and listen to people's political bullshit. You don't have to sit and listen to what
I hate all those people.
Right. It's
All
just
those
like,
people are
whatever. It's like-
gone.
but if you could use it strictly to get acquainted and introduced to stuff like music and movies and the arts and things like that. It's very easy to do, very easy to set up, you know, restrictions and things where you only get funneled that sort of thing. Because I get recommended more stuff on a daily basis than I even have time to listen to. But you know what? I make a point to check out as much as I possibly can, because that's the type of person I am, right? That's why I do this. It's new music is important. So, you know, the people who have the excuses, it's like, oh, I don't have the time, or I don't know how to do it. And I, you know, for the last 30 years, I just feels like nothing good has ever come out, and there's nothing good on the radio. And you watch the awards shows, it's all these bands and artists I've never heard of, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. These are all excuses, right? They're all excuses. The music underground is enormous. And so many of the bands that we grew up finding and discovering back 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago were all in the underground at some point in time as well. They were all new to us. So
I'm down here in the underground. It's a party down here, man.
you got that underground set up pretty well these days, right? Look at that.
Yeah, I am literally underground.
So anyway, so I think hopefully we've made our point. And if you're someone who's been watching this program and you still you know, not hip to anything that we're talking about, well, I don't know what to tell you. We're trying really hard to bring this point across. And that's really the reason why we do all of these channels, and why, you know, we love the classics. We love the classic bands and the classic albums just as much as anybody. There's no denying that. But to think that that's all that there is and all that will ever be, it's really not true at all. It really isn't true at all. So in parting, Brendon, Scott, you guys want to talk a little bit about what's going on in your neck of the woods over on your channels and things? Brendon, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, guys, you know, head on over to my channel, check out things. One of the things that came up here today, talking about new releases and stuff like that. Once a month, I do an album release schedule for the month ahead. Every Saturday, I post what just dropped, actual new albums, and I cover a nice wide swath of everything. So not just hard rock and metal and what I listen to, but a little bit of everything there. So head on over. You can find a lot of great stuff on my channel, as I'm sure you can on the rest of these guys.
Cool. Scott?
Yeah, I did.
That don't have nearly the kind of quality content Brandon's got over on his channel, but I do rants, rankings, reviews about the greatest music ever recorded. That's prog rock, past, present, future. You know, we use nostalgia as the hook to get you in, but we really do try to hit you over the head with a lot of new prog rock releases that are out there, because it's amazing how much great stuff is out there. Check it out. The channel's called the Prog Corner.
Awesome.
And thanks for having me on again, Pete.
Oh, this was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Jamie, why don't you talk about Let's Get Physical, as well as the shows you appear on here on Sea of Tranquility? Give a little plug to those.
Come on over to Let's Get Physical. It's not about Olivia Newton-John. It's about physical media, whether it's magazines, CDs, vinyl, Blu-rays, DVDs, books, comic books, whatever. If you put it in your hand and you're getting some entertainment out of it, you know what I mean, not the other thing. We don't want to see your schlong. Then come on over, post a picture of it on Let's Get Physical. We'll talk about it. We'll celebrate physical media. And Brendon, follow him, because I didn't even know Dokken had a new album coming out until I saw Brendon talking about it. I was like, Dokken, huh? Oh, it's gonna suck. And then I listened to the 2 new singles. They're not bad, so it's pre-ordered.
Excellent.
So see how this works?
Yes.
Jamie, talk a little bit about Curse of the Collector.
Oh, Curse of the Collector, we do it once a month, which is kind of like a sister show to Let's Get Physical, where we talk about our, you know, it's a curse. It's definitely a curse. We just keep buying stuff. As you can see, Scott bought over 100 albums so far, and these are long albums. Prog albums are like double CD. I don't know where you get the time. Scott actually, Scott is actually 30 years old. He got all that gray hair from lack of sleep from listening to all those double CDs, those 80-minute albums one after.
I have a clone.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't know how he does it. So, yeah. What was I talking about?
Curse of the Collector.
Oh yes, Curse of the Collector. So once a month we do a show, and it's really fun. We just share a lot of the things that we bought, and last show we had a lot of laughs. You know, once a month. Check it out.
Awesome. George, you want to talk about in the Prog Seat and 4 Fusion Friday?
Yeah, and the Prog Seat every 2 weeks. All forms of progressive music talked about there, panel discussions, topic shows. And 4 Fusion Friday is a monthly show. We have a new releases segment that starts every show, so no resting on the laurels of the past. And then we'll do a ranking, topic ranking, and we're putting on good shows there. We're building our draw, but both shows need watching.
Yeah, I mean, these are programs for geeks, basically. If you're a music nerd, that's what it's all about. We have fun, but it's fun, and also here on Sea of Tranquility. I mean, we have a variety of programming here. We do Hudson Valley Squares every other Monday, and that's more of a hard rock and metal themed show. It's meant to be entertaining and funny, and we talk about, you know, hard rock and metal albums and bands and things like that. I do a show every Friday morning at the Funhouse with Martin Popoff. Again, a real geeky, nerdy show, talking in great detail about very, very specific things in music and albums and stuff like that. And yeah, we did Monsters Den, which is the lone non-music show that we do on the channel as well, all about horror, monster, sci-fi films and things like that. We do It's All About the Fuzz, which is all about kind of the fuzzy music, where we talk about stoner and doom and heavy psych and all that sort of thing. So there's lots of stuff we do on the channel. UK Connection with Simon Bray and Stephen Reed from across the pond. We talk about all kinds of music over on that show as well. So yeah, as you can see, a lot of stuff is covered from all these gentlemen sitting here on this panel. So embrace new music, folks. Support the artist. This is not about us. This is about you guys getting enriched with new music in your lives, because we know how important music is to all of us. And go support the bands. That's what it's all about. So thanks for watching, everybody. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together all the damn time. For Brendon Snyder, Scot Lade, George Lamie, and Jamie Laszlo, I am Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Take care.
Bye.
Good one, guys.